Arrow Season 4, Episode 14, Code of Silence. Now, this episode was actually pretty interesting because the way they balanced out the bad guys in this episode was really interesting because it made it seem like there was never really a main villain, even though it was technically the Demolition Squad. It was so well balanced out between this squad. There were quite a few scenes with Damien Dark in this episode, even though he wasn't actually doing stuff himself at this time around. And then there was his wife on the political front, going specifically after Oliver, while the demolition thing, we ultimately find out, is going after Oliver, at least by the end. But it was the way they balanced it out. It was like it almost feels like there's no main. If it was a weird way of balance, it made me feel like there was no main issue when there clearly was right in front of me. But I thought it was really interesting, and plus, the focus of the villains also shifts. So that was another weird thing because this episode starts off focused on Lance, and it's like, oh, Damien Dark talks to the other people from Hive, and it's like we believe that he is working with the vigilantes, or he's working with the Green Arrow, and Malcolm's there, and he's basically like, I can pretty much confirm that. So it starts off where they're trying to kill him, and then the team gets him to safety, so he's in the lair most of the rest of the episode, and then it shifts from the first two explosions, the first one going after Lance, the second one just being like a random building, to this final one, which was a surprise to like the characters, but not to me, was them going after Oliver and them trying to take down this mayoral debate. So it was kind of funny watching it. It was like it's weird how there feels like there's no main villain, but they were there. It was the Demolition Squad. It was very obvious because they had two full fight scenes with the characters. But it was just like it's weird, just the way it was so balanced out. It was just like they I don't know. I guess it's because they were actually hired. They weren't just like random villains that came in, and then we had Hive in the background. It was like, no, these are the guys that Hive actually hired to do this job, or these couple of jobs actually. So I liked the way that it was balanced because it was so balanced. It felt like there was no one more important than anyone else, and I kind of liked that idea of there wasn't like this giant focus on like just one of the villains out of the episode. It was like, no, it's kind of all the same bag of villains, and these guys are hired by this guy, and then this guy's wife is going on kind of the Oliver front of things, while these guys are going after the Green Arrow and his team. So I like the way that all of that stuff played out, and then ultimately it ended up being everyone's just trying to kill Oliver, which of course failed. And Oliver comes out on top and he wins the mayoral debate, which I thought was really funny when they showed it, because once they solved the problem and they took all those guys down, when Oliver like shook her hand and stuff and they were going back to their podiums, she looked super worried, like she hadn't prepared a single thing, like she knew she would lose the debate. And I just thought that was really funny. Like, did she really spend all her time just like, oh, he's gonna die anyway, so why bother practicing this fake thing that well, I'll instantly win anyway. Like, there's no need for a debate because he's gonna die. And I feel like that's how they did that, because she instantly looked worried, like, oh crap, like we're gonna have a real debate and this is dumb. So I thought that was actually really funny when they showed that. It could have been nothing and she was just actually adjusting her clothing and stuff, but it was like, I don't know, that may have been on purpose, and it was just funny to me. That's what it felt like. So I'm gonna go with that because it was funnier to me. But I was glad to see that happen, and just the way that they played that out. And it starts off with Lance, and then has a focus on Lance as well as Donna, which was also really good because she didn't have, or she in this episode did have a lot of different components of her character really show off. And we got the normal side of her, which is the really funny character and the loving mother and things like that, where she's planning their really big engagement party and everything. So that was really funny. And then closer to the end of the episode, when they're at the debate before everything starts off, she's doing the makeup, and then she's like, powdering up Felicity. It's like, we're not even on camera. What are you doing? And then after all of that, she was just like, I'm going to change this. This is a stupid shade of makeup or something. And I was like, why'd she do all that? And it was just really funny. But we also got a serious side of her as well when she broke things off with Lance because he was trying to protect her. And when that first happened, I was like, oh, why is it, why is she like just breaking it off? Like he says like something bad's happening, but I can't explain it. And I was like, why'd she kind of just shut it all down instantly like that? That seemed over the top. And then as soon as she mentioned her husband, it was like, my ex-husband was a piece of crap liar. And I was like, oh, I instantly understand now because from the last two episodes, we saw exactly how bad he was. We saw him lie to his own daughter and say like, oh, I want to get back into your life and be a great dad to you. But in actuality, I'm going to leave this little thing here and steal every single bit of technology that you have and, probably sell it off to someone because I don't really give a crap about you, even though you're my own daughter. So as soon as she brought up her ex-husband, I was like, oh, I won't say I like switched sides, but I was like right in the middle after that because I was on Lance's side because we knew exactly where he was coming from and what was happening. And then she instantly had like just in that one sentence, I was like, yep, that's good enough. That's a good enough reason for me because we got to see exactly what he was trying to do and how he was basically a supervillain in the episode before last. So that was enough, and I was like, all right, I'm right in the middle because they both have perfect arguments, and that was pretty much it. So we got to see her sad, and I thought it was good. I thought it was cool that we got to see this other side of her character that we have seen in bits and pieces before, like when she was being really inspirational to Felicity after things first happened. But this was like about her personally. It wasn't like her getting emotional to help her daughter. It was her getting emotional because it was her own life, and I actually like that. It wasn't focused towards Felicity. It was solely about her just having a difficult moment. So I really like that idea because she's a side character, so we don't get to see that as much. I feel like we haven't seen Lance a lot, like at all, since like the mid-season premiere. Like since the show's really come back, I feel like we haven't seen like any of Lance really. Like we had the relationship thing, and that was about it. I feel like that was kind of the only thing we really had. Just a couple of moments here and there, and so I was kind of glad to see at least the first half of this was kind of really focused. At least one of the stories at least was really focused on him and the issues he was going through. So I was glad to see that happen where they got a bit of focus in this episode, which did carry on throughout even after he wasn't as much of a target. It still carried on until the end of the episode once they worked things out. But I like that. It was good to see them get some focus, at least a little bit, in this episode, because I certainly thought he was lacking as far as some of the stuff from the last episode, where I really thought he should have had a moment where he really heard about Donna's ex-husband because he was actually in town and now he's the supervillain and he even arrested him and all that extra stuff. And it was like, man, that it just didn't seem like it was enough, because I just felt like he should have had an interaction with that guy in some way, or at least they mentioned it, even if he didn't actually talk with Felicity's dad. Just some mention of that with him having actually been in town. And then it was kind of like, nothing. He arrested him at the end of the episode and that was it. So definitely glad to see them get a bit of focus in this episode. Um, it's like a really minor thing because I'm thinking of like towards the end of the episode, Curtis was super awesome in this for making that little chip, which stimulates. I can't remember exactly what it stimulated. I believe it was muscle movement or something like that. So that was very cool. That was a great moment in this episode that I really really loved. It for one showed off how much of a genius he was because the only thing that was holding him back was the fact that they didn't have a power source that could last long enough because it has to be implanted into someone. And of course we get the Palmer Tech basically forever battery. So he was like, once I knew, once that was a realistic thing and I figured that out, I knew that this could be a possibility. So that was really cool, and it kind of gives us a bit of a timeline as to whether or not Felicity, basically it says Felicity will walk at some point for sure. And it kind of gives us a timeline because he says it should theoretically work by the time she's ready to walk down the aisle. But, very experimental, so no guarantees there. But basically it says, when they get married or around that time, even if it's after, Felicity will be walking. So I would assume that that's going to be near the end of the season. I'm trying to remember if they've ever really mentioned a date, which I don't believe they did, and that's mostly because like sort of a TV thing. They don't tend to mention specific dates, but I don't think they've ever really mentioned one. So I don't know if they're actually married during that, the graveyard scene or anything like that. And I didn't really bother to look when they were in the car. She's like wearing a different ring or something like that. And of course she's sitting in the limo, so that was always the big thing. Like when everyone saw her, pretty much like, is she still paralyzed in the future, or is she not paralyzed because she's of course sitting in the limo, no real reason to move around a bunch. So we don't know if she's going to be walking by then, but basically this says she will walk, guaranteed. Like they have the battery, she'll just have to do rehab still, but she can do it, and it's not just you're paralyzed and that's it. So that's actually really cool. That's actually very interesting. I'm excited to see that, see her get back on her feet. So I thought that was a very great moment. They of course throw in another Mr. Terrific moment because Oliver, when Felicity's like, I don't know what to say, and Oliver's like, I do, and he's like, Curtis, you're terrific. It was like, there it is, like just another little reference to his superhero name, which is Mr. Terrific. But that was a very great moment. I really loved that one. I was very surprised by it. And I thought when I saw that, I'm like, that looks like something that could like go on somebody's spine or something. And he had this little box. I'm like, I feel like it's gonna be some little spinal thing, and that's exactly what it was. So I was right. Um, when they first kind of show it, and he puts that little wallpaper up though, that was really funny. And it's just Felicity's head moving like that, and it's just like blah 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 blah. I really love that. I don't know who came up with that idea, but that I thought was really funny. Even though it's just like a minor little thing, I love that moment. That was just really good to me. So I certainly enjoyed that. Uh, Thea finding out about William was very cool because she was kind of just doing her job. Oddly enough, it just totally came up like, hey, mom wrote this $1 million check, which I'll be totally honest, I had no idea someone could look up the fact that you wrote a check that was never cashed. That blew my mind because I'm like, if no one ever cashed it, how would you ever know anyone wrote this random check, which they also had a picture of, and I mean, oh, and it was like a picture of the check. It wasn't like, oh, she wrote something down like $1 million to this person, like, because they have that in checkbooks. I know where you write down how much you put on a specific check, but it was like a flat out picture of the check. And it was like $1 million to this person, and I was like, how in the world did they get that picture? And how did they know she wrote a check that was never ever cashed? Unless she thought it was cashed, and maybe that's why, I guess that's why they had the discrepancy, but technically it still doesn't explain why they have the picture of the check. But I could see why that would explain the discrepancy, because she would have thought like, oh, this girl, she actually did disappear, so she must have cashed in that $1 million check, and they were like had like hundreds of millions of dollars, so she probably wouldn't have even bothered checking like, oh, a million's gone or something like that. She probably just assumed she did it. So maybe that's how that worked out, but I was very surprised when that came up. I'm like, how would they know that if she didn't actually cash the check? Because there's no paper trail if there's no paper that that transferred. So that's surprising, but I guess that was the reason. And they did. I guess they kind of mentioned that, and they basically just say it's a discrepancy. But I was confused at first, like, well, technically there's no discrepancy because nothing happened. But if she kind of put that on her taxes and just assumed she did it, then I guess it does make sense that that's how that would come up. The picture thing still doesn't make sense, but the fact that they would know $1 million was just like super random, which she would put that info out there, which you would think if that was on their taxes, she'd find some super rich person way to work around the fact that she gave this her son's girlfriend $1 million. You think you'd do something, put like a crazy fake name or something like that, instead of just being like, yep, $1 million to this person. Like, you bothered to do all of that, but you didn't bother to actually check to see if the $1 million left the account, I guess. But that surprised me. I was cool to see that the figured it out, and it was just a random thing. It wasn't like she was snooping or anything like that. She just found it out. And of course, once Oliver clearly was being weird about it, she looked into it some more. So that was pretty cool, which it does come up again in the next episode. And I'll get to the promo because the promo had me very excited. But this is a fun episode. I was glad to see that happen. The flashback I actually really enjoyed in this episode because we had at least one big thing happen, which is Oliver killed Conklin, and that was a big moment. And simply put, that's all it needed to be. It was like it either needs to the flashback either need to parallel the episode, which I've said several times they have not done this season, or something big needs to happen, and that happened in this episode. So I was excited by that. All the action in this episode in general was good. The choreography for the flashback was good. All the fights they had with the demolition squad were really fun. I really love Thea and Laurel teaming up on the woman. That was actually kind of cool because we don't normally get stuff like that where it's two people fighting one person. So that was really cool. Diggle got his revenge on the guy with the sledgehammer, and I'm pretty sure he like destroyed his jaw because he hit him with the sledgehammer in the head, and it was like near his mouth. I'm like, I'm pretty sure his jaw would just be like glass and would have been destroyed. But they kill villains all the freaking time, and it's just like, bad guys. But I actually like the flashback in this one, so that was pretty good. I was surprised to see that they were digging inside of the area where the cells were. That really surprised me because I thought they'd be outside in this episode during the flashback portion, and that didn't happen. So that surprised me, but it was actually fun. It was a fun flashback. Oddly enough, I kind of wish they sped the story up in the flashback like just a little bit, because this flashback would have been the perfect flashback for the last episode because it was all about him being a monster and having it takes a monster to kill another monster, and I feel like that would have been the best possible thing. Like it tied in. Like I'm trying to remember the flashback from the last episode, but not much really happened. Like the woman was trying to barter, if I remember right, and then the guy came in and was like, "Oh," and he just snatched the stone out of her hand. That was pretty much what happened in the flashback last time. But this would have been perfect, where it was like he killed Conklin in the flashback, but then it would have been in the present tense. He didn't kill Merlin. I think it would have been the perfect flashback. But even without it being the perfect blank, because it would have been a big moment in the flashback, and it would have paralleled. Even without that, at least we had a big moment, and it was just fun. It was a good flashback. Um, but it was a good episode, though. Also, super just passed along information. Lila is the head of Argus. I was glad to hear that, and I do love when shows do that sometimes, where the characters know it, and it's just like, oh yeah, this amazing thing. So about that, and it was like, so she officially took over. I was glad to hear that. It kind of confirmed an idea I had because in the next Flash episode, they're doing a crossover where it's only Lila and Diggle. And I was like, if it's only the two of them, that kind of has to be Argus' thing, which means she would have had to have taken over because, well, either she took over or she did decide to rejoin, which I wouldn't think she would do unless she took over. So I was glad to see that happen. I'm looking forward to that crossover now because, I mentioned before, I want to see Lila have more time on the show, even if it's just a crossover. I want to see Lila have more time on the show, so I was very glad to hear that. Definitely enjoyed this episode. I was a little upset that they were all surprised that the mayoral debate was the final building that was going to be destroyed. And I'm like, why can't in one series we just have it where the villains are like, or the heroes are just like, all right, we don't know where anybody's going, but they're hired by the main villains. Oh well, we gotta stop doing that. I gotta focus on this other thing where we're dealing with the wife of the main villain, and I just figured it out. Like, why can't we just have that? But that was something in my head, but it was fine. The promo has me very excited for this next episode. Felicity finds out about William. I guess that's another thing. William shows up at the end of this episode. I can't believe I'm gonna skip that. William shows up at the end of this because Damien Dark has him. I don't know what that means for his mother. I don't know if they knocked her out, if they kidnapped her, drugged her, or what. I would assume that she's at least kidnapped. She's probably not just dead already, but I would assume she's at least kidnapped and being held somewhere else so that they can take William. And so Damien Dark has him. Felicity finds out in the next episode about William. And we get Vixen, which is the coolest thing ever. I didn't know she was going to be in the show so soon. I think I did hear that before even the mid-season finale, but I'd forgotten. So I'm very excited for that. The actress that's going to be playing Vixen is the voice actress for Vixen from the animation. If you haven't seen it, it's only 30 minutes total. It's like 6 5-minute episodes. very good. The animation is great. Oliver and Barry are in it, and it's canon. So when she shows up in this, Oliver should know who she is, but they had Felicity say who she was in the promo. I'm assuming for everyone who didn't watch it online yet. So definitely check it out ahead of time. It's very cool. Great little origin story. Superhero from Detroit, so that was cool. Even though the animation and the buildings they made look nothing like the city I was born in, I don't care. She's technically supposed to be from Detroit, so that was cool to me. Um, Her costume is very different from the animation, so that kind of sucked because I like the animation costume. It was very cool, but it kind of was just like some leather jacket and pants, and it was like that dirty yellow. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, that makes me think of Reverse Flash. But I'm super excited for Vixen coming into the show, so I can't wait to see that next week. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode, though, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and where do you guys think things are going to go once Felicity finds out the truth? Like, now that I know that that's going to happen in this next episode, and seemingly everyone else finds out too. That was in the promo where Oliver was yelling. It seemed like everyone else was behind him. So I want to know where you guys think Felicity and Oliver are going to end up after she finds out that truth. And what do you guys think of Vixen coming in? If you haven't seen the animation, definitely check it out. It's really great. They actually swear a little bit in it as well, which is pretty cool. Some words they can't exactly say on TV. So check it out. Like I said, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode and what you think is going to happen in the next one once Felicity finds out. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.